Coming up today, tests show a Korean man suspected of carrying MERS in Slovakia probably doesn't have the potentially deadly virus. 15 people in Korea have died from MERS and nearly 150 have been infected. Ending the weekend with a bang, North Korea test fires 3 short-range missiles into the East Sea. Plus, Korea's foreign minister heads to Washington to sign a long-awaited civilian nuclear energy cooperation deal with the US, which will allow Seoul to expand non-military nuclear activities. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, June 15th here in Seoul. Thanks, as always, for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the latest on the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, outbreak in Korea. Amid the government's efforts to ease public fear over the spread of the virus and to normalise the people's lives, the country reported 7 new cases on Sunday, bringing the total number of patients now to 145. The death toll has also risen to 15 after a 61-year-old man died in Busan, the first MERS-related death in the southern port city. Almost 5,000 people are in quarantine for possible infection. However, it is worth noting that none of the confirmed cases have occurred outside hospitals. Meanwhile, overseas, a Korean man who has been isolated in a hospital in Slovakia as a suspected case of MERS has tested negative for the virus after 3 rounds of blood tests. However, officials say he will remain quarantined pending an additional test, as the 4th test produced no clear results. The 38-year-old man who arrived in the country in early June was put under quarantine on Saturday after showing MERS-related symptoms. And seen as an improving sign, a number of schools and preschools nationwide have decided to resume classes from this Monday. According to the Education Ministry, only 440 schools will continue with the suspension of classes, far less than the almost 3,000 schools which closed down last week. Economists say the Korean government will likely draw up a supplementary budget to manage the fallout from the MERS outbreak. An analyst from NH Investment and Securities says there was demand for a supplementary budget even before the virus arrived in Korea. The Finance Ministry says the outbreak has seriously affected domestic consumption. Traffic at department stores, movie theatres and even baseball games during the first week of June, when the first MERS deaths were confirmed, dropped to up to 80% compared to the same period a year ago. Economists generally agree that a supplementary budget could help sustain the ailing Korean economy. The Korea Development Institute estimates the 2013 supplementary budget pulled up the economic growth rate by up to 0.3 percentage points. North Korea fired 3 short-range missiles into the East Sea on Sunday. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, they were launched between 4:21 p.m. and 4:45 p.m. Korea time and are presumed to be KN-01 missiles. The JCS added the latest launch appears to be a test firing of anti-ship projectiles, noting they only flew around 100 kilometers. The military is keeping a close watch on Pyongyang's movements for any additional provocations. Today, June 15th, marks the 15th anniversary of a landmark joint declaration to increase economic and cultural exchanges between the two Koreas, but in recent years, inter-Korean ties have soured a great deal. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports on the possibilities of trying to improve that relationship.
June 15, 2000, former South Korean President Kim Dae-jung and then North Korean leader Kim Jong-il met in Pyongyang. It was a promising moment for the peninsula. as the two leaders signed a joint declaration to foster reconciliation and economic cooperation. That optimism came to an end in 2010 when North Korea attacked the Cheonan, a South Korean warship. Seoul followed up with the May 24th measures, banning all economic and cultural exchanges. North Korea continues to call for an end to the sanctions, but Seoul says Pyongyang needs to take responsibility for his actions.
Our previous position remains unchanged. To lift the May 24th measures, Pyongyang needs to take responsibility for the sinking of the Cheonan warship.
But now, it seems Seoul has offered a small olive branch.
We want to resolve issues through dialogue, so we want to meet up with our North Korean counterparts to reach an agreement on pending issues.
But Pyongyang isn't budging, claiming the South has set unnecessary preconditions for talks. In addition to dialogue, Seoul has also vowed to cultivate more inter-Korean civilian exchanges in non-political sectors this year, the 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japan's colonial rule. With two big anniversaries occurring this year, experts say there could be major improvements in inter-Korean ties, but not until this issue surrounding the May 24th measures are resolved. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se is due in Washington for a three-day visit where he will sign a civilian nuclear deal. The agreement with the US will allow Seoul to expand non-military nuclear activities. Now, President Park Geun-hye was scheduled to sign the deal in person, but she had to postpone her US trip last week as the country struggles to contain the MERS virus. The new deal will give South Korea more access to uranium enrichment and research. Seoul and Washington are in close contact to rearrange summit talks between the presidents. And Korea's top diplomat has been racking up the air miles over the past few days in an attempt to convince UNESCO committee members to vote against Japan's bid to register very controversial facilities as World Heritage Sites. The locations include camps and factories where tens of thousands of Koreans were forced to work as slave laborers. Now, Yoon Byung-se's first stop was Germany. That's home to the UNESCO committee's chairperson. He then flew to Zagreb on Saturday, where he met with his Croatian counterpart. Now, she said that she understands Korea's position and hopes a consensus can be reached with Japan. On Sunday, Yoon flew to New York for talks with the Malaysian foreign minister before, as we just heard, flying to Washington. UNESCO's decision on Japan's World Heritage bid is expected on June 28th. A massive rally was held in Tokyo over the weekend in protest of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's drive to bolster the role and scope of Japan's self-defense forces. According to Kyodo News Agency, around 25,000 protesters, the number estimated by the organisers of the rally, surrounded Japan's Diet building on Sunday to express their strong opposition against Abe's effort to pass a set of national security bills. Opposition party leaders also took part in the rally. They say forcing through controversial bills that would allow Japan to exercise the right to come to the military aid of an enemy under attack is a violation of Japan's war-renouncing constitution. Now, in some science-related news, DNA phenotyping is just starting to be used to track down criminals and put a face to missing and unidentified people. While the technology is especially useful in scientific investigations, regulations in Korea have stalled research somewhat. Our Park Se-young explains.
These wanted posters in Hong Kong were created using the suspect's DNA. Their crime? Littering. The posters are part of a campaign launched on Earth Day in April by a Hong Kong-based NGO to raise awareness about the region's litter problem. More than 16,000 tons of waste are dumped into streets and public spaces there every day. To create the posters, volunteers collected litter samples from local streets, including chewing gum and cigarette butts. The samples were then sent to a US-based genetics technology company, which used its DNA phenotyping system to read tens of thousands of genetic variants from each sample. The data can predict ethnicity, eye hair and skin color, freckling, and face shape. The samples produced 27 facial composites, and the campaign was a big hit on social media. The The science behind the idea has existed for years. Here in Korea, however, the research has stalled in its early stages due to privacy protection laws. To make progress in their research, scientists need numerous samples of DNA and mugshots, both of which are restricted by the legislation.
This technical development prioritizes the public interest. If it doesn't contradict research ethics, and we use the DNA and photos purely for research purposes, without releasing them, I believe the law should be open to the idea.
If DNA information can be used to sort out distinct features of the face and body, it could be applied to a variety of fields, from criminal investigation to archaeological research. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, they are being dubbed last-ditch talks, but negotiations between the European Union and Greece over Athens' multi-billion-dollar debt problem have failed. The European Commission says this means a final decision on a possible default will be put in the hands of Eurozone finance ministers. It says the proposals Greece brought to the meeting over the reforms it would implement to avert bankruptcy were incomplete. Now, despite the breakdown, Greece's Deputy Prime Minister said his country remains prepared to bridge a budget gap as demanded by lenders, but it will not do it by cutting pensions or raising taxes. Greece has to seal a deal with its international creditors within the next few days if it is to avoid defaulting on a $1.8 billion payment to the International Monetary Fund at the end of the month. Flooding in Georgia's capital has left at least 12 people dead and twice as many people missing. On top of that, animals have been running loose from Tbilisi's damaged zoo. Heavy rainfall caused a river which flows through the city to break its banks and sweep away buildings and cars. Now, tigers, lions, wolves and other animals, as you can see there, were among some of the animals that escaped from damaged cages in the city's zoo. And while some have been captured, many are still roaming the streets. And as you just saw a few seconds ago, in an unusual scene, a hippo was seen plodding through the streets, but was later tranquilized and taken somewhere safe. Local residents have been warned to stay indoors until all the most dangerous animals, including, of course, a lion, are accounted for. Now, the Philae lander, which lost power after a historic comet landing, has woken up and contacted Earth. The probe became the first spacecraft to land on a comet when it touched down on the icy surface of comet 67P in November. The European Space Agency says the lander has topped up its battery power as the comet moves closer to the sun. The probe also updated its own Twitter account, sending the message, "Hello Earth, can you hear me?" Scientists now say they are waiting for the next contact. They estimate the lander has thousands of data packets it is waiting to send back. This should give scientists a better idea of what exactly is happening with the washing machine-sized lander as it sits perched on that comet. Now, Team Korea have scored their first ever point at the FIFA Women's World Cup, but came up just short of a win. The women allowed a goal from Costa Rica in the first half, but Ji So-yoon and Jun Gaul rallied the team to a lead with back-to-back goals. But unfortunately, in the 89th minute, Carla Villalobos put a dagger through Team Korea's heart with an equaliser. Still, the 2-2 draw is a very significant step forward for the team. Korea lost all 3 group matches in its FIFA debut in 2003. And before this draw, it seemed that trend might continue in Canada when the ladies lost their first World Cup 2015 match to Brazil. Next up for the 18th ranked Korea is a must-win match against 14th ranked Spain. That will kick off at 8 p.m. Thursday, Korea time. Well, that's all we have for now on this Monday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful day, and thank you as always for watching, and we do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.